Hello and welcome to the newest episode of Watch This Space, Rivada's series of conversations about space technology, and the future of communications. I'm Brian Carney, and my guest this week is Ronald van der Breggen, the Chief Commercial Officer of Rivada Space. Welcome to the show, Ronald.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to this.
So what I wanted to talk to you about today was the Outernet's customers. You are, as Chief Commercial Officer, you're spearheading the sales effort for the Outernet, and so you have a lot of contact. Obviously, you hear a lot of feedback from the kind of people that you're talking to, prospective customers. What do they see in the Outernet? What is the appeal from their perspective, if you could summarize it?
Yeah, and of course, happy to go into that. It is true that we're seeing a lot of customer traction, and we've been asking ourselves the very same question: what is so appealing? And well, the cheeky answer would be it's because we have a great sales team, and we have great products, all of which is true, by the way. But there is something else going on here, obviously, and I say that because there's many satellite companies out there, and many of us here and many people watching probably worked or have worked for some of them, and may have been in a situation that new satellites were planned, and there was an effort to make sure that as much of that capacity was already under contract before launch, and sometimes even before the satellites went on the production line, so to speak. And that's true for single satellites in a geostationary arc. It may be true for smaller constellations such as O3b that I had the pleasure of working on, and the bigger constellations like we see today. And then typically you don't have that level of customer interest. And so I think the short answer is we're doing something very different. And that resonates with people. And the best way to explain that, there's many ways of doing it, but for this interview and trying to keep it short, it's probably a good approach to put yourself in the shoes of an end user. And so as an end user, there's different levels of connections that you want to make. And it starts with having sheer internet access no matter where you are. And everybody understands that type of requirement.
Right.
But a next step up would be I want to be on the corporate network because I need to work. It's not a vacation, but it's a workation. And so now I need to log on. And now the requirements go up a little bit. I mean, you may have a team meeting at 3 p.m. on Monday, and that just happens to be the time in which it's very difficult to make a connection because everybody's jumping on the line at the very same time. So now the requirements go up. And now we're still talking about a connection, right? But the next level up from there is to be able to use that connection that you have and connect straight into other assets of the company, be it different locations, or maybe a CEO that is on a plane, or direct connections into a research and development center that needs to be secure. So what you can see is levels of requirements go up and up and up. And it's fair to say that in our industry, everything is focused around getting internet access. And because once internet access is there, then it is on the ground that many other things happen. Layers of VPN and some quality control capabilities and software and encryption. All of these layers are being put on top to get to the next tier, but never reaching quite the level of either security or latency or performance that is needed for that ultimate connection, being part of a network that is completely dedicated to you. And that's what we do. And it's definitely true that we're tapping into a market where others are also very active, adding more bandwidth to the problem as there's capacity constraints, adding more software as more functionality is required. But really that extra step up and getting connected into a corporate network that is dedicated to you, not having to travel through other types of infrastructure, networks, cables, or whatever it is, that is what we do. And
So let me
yeah.
if I could stop you there, because you said something interesting. I don't know if everyone understands this. I think, you know, the layman thinks about a satellite connection. They assume, okay, they've got some device or a dish, a user terminal, goes up to the satellite, and then that satellite is beaming their connection straight down to their destination. But what you're saying is often that isn't the case with satellite, that it's not going from where I am with my, as a customer, from my user terminal to wherever I want to end up, my corporate headquarters or something, that it's going somewhere else first. Can you just unpack that a little bit first for us?
Yeah. So any and every satellite as we know it today basically is a mirror in the sky. And
Okay.
that mirror is pointed in a certain direction. And that direction from where you are to where it needs to go typically is a what we call a gateway,
Okay.
where we have infrastructure that picks up that traffic that you send or sends that information you want to receive to and from a terrestrial infrastructure, be it the internet itself or just a cable system when it's not immediate about internet access. So what satellites typically do is offer a last mile solution into areas where there's no alternative. That's how
Okay.
it started in this industry. And you know, we can unpack that even further if you'd like, because
So
remember
what
the
are just so
sure.
what is Rivada doing differently then if other satellite systems are this last mile, which it's a long way to go that last mile, but you know, light is fast and radio waves are fast, so I understand that. But how is the Outernet different in that regard? It's not a last mile solution. That's what you're saying?
It's not only a last mile solution. No, the
Okay.
Outernet really is a terrestrial network in space, and where everything satellite was focused on being a last mile in space, up to the satellite, down into some endpoint of a terrestrial infrastructure, and then the rest on the terrestrial infrastructure. We have the last mile. We can still reach any and all places on Earth, like all satellites basically can. But then we also carry the traffic across these satellites. And
Okay.
that's the big differentiator. We use lasers not just to connect into a gateway or extend the reach to gateways that are farther out. We use lasers the way terrestrial infrastructure uses fiber optic cables, and that is to run a network protocol over it and making sure that it then can transport information securely, safely, in a fast way across these fiber optic cable systems, where as nodes, we use routers and switches. All of that has been done before in the terrestrial world, and we
Right.
basically elevate that up into space.
Wow.
And in doing so, we've created a terrestrial network, but now it's in space. And that comes with enormous amounts of advantages, because now you're not connecting into a gateway anymore. Now you can go across the top and connect directly into whatever location you need to go to. So now, yes, you can go from that remote place to the airplane that the CEO may sit on. You can now send your secure data outside of everything and anything terrestrial, making sure that nobody is able to place his hands on it. So you really now not so much in the business of selling capacity to and from the internet like an ISP used to do back in the 90s. You're
Right.
really selling you're really selling security. You're selling the ability to run a corporate application safely and securely.
Okay,
You're
so who are the customers for that product? I mean, I understand if I buy internet service, whether it's satellite or terrestrial, right? There's sort of a consumer product. Is this doesn't sound like a consumer product. So who are you selling it to, or who are your sales guys talking to about this stuff? What kinds of customers is Rivada talking to?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and we're selling mostly to governments and enterprises, and then particularly for that type of information, where there is some specific requirements with regards to it being sensitive or it requiring a very short path towards its destination, or it being such that it needs to be on standby for when cables are cut, or it's typically of a very specific nature, not in the category of we need bulk bandwidth to go from one place to the other or to be connected to the internet. And Brian, that's the thing about it. That brings us to pricing, quite frankly, because if you are not solving the problem of I need connectivity into here or from there, and I can choose you or somebody else
Right.
for it, when very quickly things tend to be about price. We're selling indeed a security need. And so the budgets to solve those types of issues, be it for a company or for a government, tend to be different budgets, tend
Right.
to be bigger budgets. Because to give you an example, if you are CIO of a company and you're responsible for keeping your data safe, and if that's the stuff that you're lying awake from at night, being worried that something might happen in certain locations, or because your information is traveling through some jurisdictions that don't pay so close attention to people that may want to tamper with that data,
Right.
then what price is it? A discussion about whether something costs 300 or 280? No, I mean, if this information gets tampered, then that might put the whole future of the company at risk. If you're depending heavily on research and development, for instance,
Right.
if that gets out on the street where you lose all your IP, then the
Sure.
discussion is not anymore about whether it costs this, that, or maybe I can get 10% discounts. And it is really about, can you assure me that this stays safe? And if the answer to that is yes, then that comes with an enormous amount of value, and people are more than prepared to pay a very decent price for that.
No, that totally makes sense. Are there particular industries that are you and your sales guys have seen have a lot of interest in this, or maybe explain a little bit about how you're selling this and who you're selling it to?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned, government and enterprise is something we specifically look at. Governments, because there's an inherent requirement for them to have this type of capacity and network infrastructure available. Security is of absolute importance.
Right.
Imagine the example of an embassy network, as we use it often with many governments, really. I mean, you have your Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have 200 embassies across the world, and for them to be connected in today's infrastructure means exactly what I said earlier. You have tons of cable systems going through many meet-me points and switch panels in all sorts of countries, some that you are friends with and maybe some not so much, and many operators and all of that. And now there's the alternative of putting a roof, putting a satellite up your roof, satellite dish up your roof, and make a connection directly to the satellite, and then go across and then beam it down onto the antenna that's on the rooftop of the embassy, wherever it may be. And then you have a single hop connection straight from your Ministry of Foreign Affairs into those embassies. They
Right. And
immediately
you know
recognize the value of
exactly
that.
where it's gone, and you know whose equipment it's passed through, and you've reduced the opportunities for interception. You've gained control over the data path. You
Exactly.
maintain sovereignty, as they say, over that data from wherever your Ministry of Foreign Affairs is to wherever that embassy is.
Yeah.
You've been in control of it the entire time, and you know where it's been.
Yeah. As
Um,
we say it, we take the V out of VPN. It becomes an RPN. It becomes a real private network. And that's of great interest to governments. It's something they recognize immediately, and so we definitely spend a lot of time discussing opportunities with them surrounding the Outernet on a very frequent basis. The other big market, and for this market we need to do a little bit more work, is the enterprise market. As I always say, any and every company has a portion of their traffic which they deem to be critical to their business, that they want to keep safe, and that needs to be transported from one place to the other or from one place to many places in the most secure way. It may be 2%, it may be 5%, it may be 10%, but there is a portion that will be earmarked as such. And then with today's technologies, where you have boxes sitting at the edge of the building, so to speak, where all the requests come in, that then can make a determination whether it should be put on a very, I can then call it a cheap network, where it's all about getting the most bits for the lowest possible price, because it doesn't really matter if it's interfered with, or because then we'll resend it and it's not critical. And those types of information streams that need to be kept secure, no matter what the costs are. And this is a very strong message that we're trying to deliver to the enterprise markets, on which we're also going to be focusing a little bit more in the next year. And we're working with distributors that help us do that do talk to these enterprise customers already as a function of their existing business. And so we're spending a lot of time now with these resellers, telling them the story about how things could be more straightforward in terms of enhancing security, ensuring that security, and that certainly does not fall on deaf ears. There's a lot of interest for that, but it's just a huge market, which is less homogeneous than the government markets are. So that requires a little bit more work, but it's fun work because, as I always say to the team here, nothing is more rewarding than to tell this story to a reseller or to an end user, and then somewhere down the conversation see that light bulb switch on at the other side, where people all of a sudden grasp this concept and go, "Whoa, wait a minute. So if what you say is true, and I can go across the top and I don't need to touch anything on the ground, does that then also mean that?" And then we sometimes hear the greatest stories, the greatest use cases of things that we haven't even thought about, but all the while confirming that there's an enormous need for transporting data more fast and more secure and into more places with more single hop connections. So as such, it's a very rewarding job with customers that see a lot of benefits from that.
So I know that, and this will be up on the internet for a while, so this information won't be recent maybe when somebody watches this, but I did see that Rivada put out an announcement this week with a company that do they build super yachts? Is that what it is? Can you say something about that kind of use case? What does that mean for that kind of buyer? Why would they be interested in this product?
Well, exactly. It was E3 Systems, and they are definitely in that business. And it's another great example of where I started out with, which is where initially the people on the super yachts were interested in getting some simple, straightforward internet access.
Right.
Now it is much more about I may be the CEO of a company, or I am hosting a group of customers on an exclusive yacht because I'm trying to close a deal or whatever it is. But the need goes from I want to be connected, give me some internet, to now I need to have a secure connection that is ensured to be fast, it is secure, and it gets me directly to the destination where I find the data that I need to be interacting with. Or sometimes it's we also have these discussions with cruise companies where it's a market where it's still a lot about just internet access. But what you now see is that large corporations, they host company events on these ships.
Right.
And for that, it's all about getting the CEO on a live video feed, talking for an hour about a new product line with lots of animations and other stuff that might have to come through. So now it is not just about a connection. It is not just about a connection that is fast with lots of capacity, where there's not going to be too many interruptions, but it's also about security. It is about making sure that if it's about sensitive stuff, that this information can be shared, knowing that it is safe and that it cannot be intercepted in some shape or form. So you constantly see that evolution from, okay, if I can be connected, now I want to make sure I have enough capacity and that is dedicated to me, to ultimately, I need to be sure that nobody can interfere with this. And then I'm locked into a network that is my own network. And one way, and we think the best way to do that, is to make sure that all the traffic that we send and receive goes through our constellation, as opposed to a myriad of cable systems, ultimately ending up in one point, a gateway, and then to just go simply up and down into whatever location. And that's a requirement you see all around and everywhere, also into these super yachts that typically hosts people that, you know, are let's say fill responsible places in large corporations that are not only satisfied with not just satisfied with internet access, but need a little bit more than that.
Right, and not satisfied with best effort, but they're willing to pay for a guaranteed service level, for low latency, for the highest possible security, and those are the kinds of features that, in general, what I hear you saying is our customers are looking for, and they're coming to us because they just can't find that with other networks that on the surface might seem like they're also satellite networks, but they've either got a different business model or a different system architecture, and they just can't deliver those things in the same way that the Outernet can. Is that fair?
That's fair to say. That's
All
exactly
right.
right, actually. Yeah.
I think we can wrap it right there, Ronald. Thank you so much for your time and your explanation, and look forward to doing this again sometime.
Absolutely, Brian. Enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.